I think we're on. Okay. Hi, Max Shank here. I am going to try something a little bit different today. If you don't know me, basically what I've done for the last 10 years is everything fitness and health related. I own a gym in Encinitas, California. I've written 3 books and put out several products online with regard to strength and flexibility. And what I'm going to do today is just show you kind of how I organize a session and what exactly I do and why I do those things and why I think that makes the most sense for your training. So I'm always going to start with some sort of joint mobility drills, and holy Jesus, this is going to really suck if that guy keeps it up. So pardon the jackhammering in the back over there. What I'm going to start with, boy, I don't know if this is going to work. Let me just say this. If you're familiar with the concept of 5-minute flow, this is essentially how I approach my warm-ups. It's fairly free form. The idea of a 5-minute flow is really that you're going to move for 5 minutes, you're going to wiggle your joints, you're going to make some circles, and ideally what you're going to accomplish is a little bit of self-discovery. So through the course of doing various mobility drills, like wrist figure eights, for example, which are a staple, you're going to notice whether or not you have some stiffness in one or both of your wrists. And what you can do then is you can focus your attention on that particular spot and start to enhance the mobility in that area. So then we'll go to some inner and outer spiraling of the shoulder. So this is just a basic joint mobility routine. There's nothing special about it per se. It does focus on some of the more important areas. And what I talk about in my book, Simple Shoulder Solution, is the importance of starting from the inside out with proper breathing and core strength. So typically what you want to do before you start doing any kind of mobility drills is make sure that this is lit up. And there are a couple ways you can do this. One of my favorite methods is actually just a simple push-up position. So you've got your hands and feet on the floor, and you can start alternating lifting limbs off the ground. So I can reach an arm up, I can reach a leg up, or I can reach opposites. And if that's a little too challenging, you can do the same thing from the knees. And the goal here is just to not let your spine move around. So start with some mobility drills. Start with some core activation techniques of some sort at your appropriate level before you start doing mobility drills. Now, the interesting thing about mobility drills is that if you do them with some sort of feedback, they're typically a little bit more effective. So let me show you what I mean by that. I can do this wrist figure eight because over the course of several years of practice, I've built the skill of doing that. But for many people, it's hard to come up with that movement right out of the gate. So the way to fix that is to imagine you have a little wristband here, and you're going to try to push the wristband together. And what that does is it gives you something to push into, and it also gives you a reference point that you can pivot from. So that will eventually teach you how to better do some of those wrist figure eights. So I'm not going to spend like all day on joint mobility. If you do have any questions, you can leave a comment, and I'll just periodically check back with that. What I'm going to work on today is some upper body push and pull, lower body push and pull. It's going to be more of an upper body day. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do some shoulder mobility drills before I jump right into handstands. And what I talk about in Simple Shoulder Solution is the importance of maintaining a strong core and proper breathing. So I'm going to make sure that I do that. That's very important for healthy shoulders. Then I'm going to mobilize the thoracic spine and neck. And some of these I can do within the same movement, but it's very important that you do them in this sequential order. If you just start cranking on your shoulder joint, that's going to create a lot more problems than there actually are. So we're going to start once again from the inside out, breathing and core strength, thoracic and neck mobility, so that's your spine mobility, scapular movement, and then finally we're going to focus on the glenohumeral joint itself, little ball and socket on the end. So one of my favorite movements for getting the core dialed in and also getting the neck to be able to disassociate from the rest of the body is from a side plank, or even better, short side plank. So you're going to pivot off of the knee here, and you're going to lift this leg up. So I've got some lateral chain activation on both sides, lats engaged. And I'm just going to start moving my neck left and right, and I want to keep this hand on the floor as well. and just deep breathe here. And if that's easy enough, go all the way out onto the foot. And then we would do that on both sides. And this side plank movement right here, especially with the neck rotation and the emphasis on good breathing, is probably one of my favorite exercises that really combines benefits for the hips and the shoulders and just having a healthy back in general. So we're going to start with something like that. Now I'm going to move on to something where I can really focus on the thoracic spine, because having good thoracic mobility is very important for having healthy and functional shoulders. So one of the things I've been enjoying lately is to take either a foam roller or an Indian club or a yoga block or something like that, so I can really isolate my thoracic spine. I'm just looking for something right now that would be ideal. It's better if it can roll, actually. So we'll try this right here. So the thoracic spine is your middle 12 vertebra, and the goal is to be able to move that without moving everything else too much. So if you throw something here on the low back that can roll, so if I lose my good spine position, it's just going to fall off immediately. So by doing this, it's going to force me to maintain a nice arch in my lumbar spine. So then what I can do is I can focus on my mid-back, trying to arch that up. So I'm trying to reach up into the air with my middle and upper back without using my lower back. And it's really hard. But if you have something round that you can hold on the lower back, it's going to keep you much more honest. And you'll notice if I go too far, it's going to roll right off. So this is probably one of my favorite ways to get people to learn how to better isolate their thoracic spine. But in a pinch, you're also going to want to work on some spinal rotation. And what that looks like is getting into your 90-90 position. And this is really one of the key movements in my mobility system, 5-minute flow, this 90-90 here. It does so many great things for your hips, but it also puts you in the perfect position for a nice spinal twist. So what we're going to do is we're going to reach the arms across toward the front leg so they are now parallel to that thigh. And we're going to deep belly breathe here, and then we can also incorporate some dynamic rotation. And you don't have to take quite as long with all this stuff, but rest assured that if you organize this right, you can basically be ready to go in about 5 minutes. I'm just adding my little commentary here, whether that's helpful or not. And with regard to the dynamic, active, passive mobilizations, it's going to be very individual. Some people respond a lot better to a deep stretch and a deep breathing and a hold, and some people will do a lot better if it's more just continuous and repetitive. My favorite way to do it is to do some combination of both. So do some stretching and breathing, and then also incorporate some dynamic movement. So getting that rotation back through the spine is one of the most important steps in functional and healthy shoulders and hips. From there, we're going to go straight into the scapula. So very few people in my experience are able to control their scapula to an acceptable level. And this should be done in both a pushing vector and a pulling vector. That means the load should be pushing this way or pulling this way at a couple of different angles. So I'll show you a couple of my favorite ways. The pushing is actually pretty straightforward. You're just going to go on the floor. And what that's going to look like, starting from a quadruped position, is squeezing the shoulder blades together and pushing them away. And it's very important to go slow and controlled on this movement because eventually we are going to increase the load. And the easiest way to increase the load is just to lift the knees off the ground. And now you've increased the load significantly. You can do it all the way from a push-up position or with the knee tucked in if you want some additional core engagement. And then as you get comfortable with this scapular push-up, what I want you to try to do is to start turning that into a nice circle. And that circle should be from the side. So it should move in a circular pattern as viewed from the side, both forwards and backwards. So you start with the push-up, and then you're going to circle it around. And then remember I said we want to work on some different vectors as well. So you'll do that same thing at a 45-degree angle. And once again, I can load my arms more if I want. Or I can get damn near vertical in like a downward dog type of position. Very important to keep the elbows locked. If you find that you're really struggling to keep the elbows locked, try to put the elbows on the floor instead. So one of the most common compensations here is that people bend the elbows instead of moving from their shoulder blades. Easy fix, come down here and take your elbows out of the equation until you can really control that movement with the shoulder blades. Now, for the pulling vector, we're going to need something to hang on to. So you can use something like this. I'm going to use the rings because they give a little more degrees of freedom. And I'm going to do that same shoulder movement from this position here. And because I'm in a deep squat, it's going to prevent me from hyperextending at the low back and using my rib cage instead of my shoulder blades. For the horizontal plane, you would do the same thing. You would just set yourself up so you're directly underneath the anchor point. And as you get stronger, I would strongly recommend you do these from a hang as well. And as you're hanging, I want you to maintain a good hollow position. And if you guys can't hear me, I'll repeat this. So the reason I did so many of those is that I want this to be my kind of strength primer for my handstand, press to handstand work that I'm going to do later. Scapular pull-ups, I think, are maybe one of the most overlooked exercises when it comes to building proper pulling strength and shoulder flexibility and posture. Many people try to jump into doing the full regular pull-up with absolutely zero ability to pull the shoulders down under that same load. So what you end up seeing is people pulling with their shoulders up inside their ears, and this is just not a strong pulling position. This would make a very hilarious picture, but a good strong pulling position should be down here, not with your shoulders up inside your ears like this. So learning how to move your shoulder blades independently under load in the pushing and pulling vector is extremely important, and this is one of the 5 key principles in my Simple Shoulder Solution program. It's very, very important to address all of these progressively and sequentially if you want to have strong and healthy shoulders. Lastly, we have to do something about the glenohumeral joint itself, and there are a couple ways to do this. I actually really like using the clubs. The clubs give you a reference point, kind of like what I was talking about with the wrist mobility before. So what we can do, and I have another club over there, I'll grab it in a second, is we can get some nice stretches, internal and external rotation, all the way spiraling down to the hand. And as I do this, I'm going to actually squeeze that club a little bit and try to lengthen it that way. So now I'm levering, because I have to use my wrist and grip strength here, and I'm pulling with my rotator cuff and my shoulder. So I would do that same thing on both sides. And this is a 1-pound club. I usually use 2, but this was handy. And nice squeeze that grip there. And you can do this from any kind of like lunge position as well. I'll typically use lunge positions a lot in my various warm-ups, and the different lunge positions I use actually are best described by a compass. So I can even show you guys something pretty cool. Let's see what we got here. No questions, but some compliments, and I will take those just as well. Thank you very much. So what you can see I've done over there is I actually drew a little circle on the ground, and the whole point of this circle is to illustrate the idea of the compass, which is the directions for the lunge matrix. And I talk about the lunge matrix in 5-minute flow. It's kind of one of the very key concepts in terms of standing mobility drill. So if you're going to do any mobility drill from standing, understand that you also can and should do all of those same mobility drills from various lunge positions. So I'm going to face the camera so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But if you think of being the focal point of a circle and going either forward, forward, left, left, back left, straight back, just like a compass, north, south, east, west, and then all the variations of those two. So for the lunge matrix, I can do a forward lunge and return. I can do a backward lunge and return. I can do a lateral lunge and return. And any mobility drills that I want to do can be done in any of these various lunge positions. So if I want to do a forward 45-degree lunge, I can do that too. And I can either keep that leg completely straight, or I can bend it and lower my center of gravity. And there's not really a right way or a wrong way to do this. It's just one of those things where if you have like a good kind of frame of reference, and you have, I guess the best way to say it would be tools that you can use within these different scenarios, it's going to be very effective. Cool, thank you for that. Appreciate the compliments. If you guys do have any questions, just let me know. So essentially my warm-up is going to be more or less that. I did some power work earlier today. Normally I would start my sessions with power work, and that power work should be jumping, sprinting, or things like that, and I will pair that with different exercises that make them more effective. So I would do jumping, but I would also do some hip mobility drills and some glute and or core activation to make those exercises more effective. And I really hope that jackhammer is not annoying you guys the way it is me, because I'm absolutely losing my mind right now. Anyway, so normally I would do a few sets of power, probably like 5 sets of jumping with hip mobility and glute activation. Now I'm going to jump into my first strength block, and this programming method comes from my Ultimate Athleticism program, and it has time blocks instead of specific sets and reps to guide your focus into different areas. So my first block is going to be single leg deadlifts and L-sit to handstand. And I'm going to use scapular pull-ups to prime the shoulders for the handstands. And I'm going to do some hip abductions, so like glute activation exercises, to emphasize and help facilitate better single leg deadlifts. So by increasing my lateral chain stability, I'm going to improve my ability to do the deadlifts. And this is a concept that I've called mobility splicing. I've also referred to it as strength primers when it comes to activation exercises. And the idea behind it is that in order to strength train, you need to challenge your body enough that you will need time to recover from it. So you can't just do a set and then rest 2 seconds and then do another set. You have to recover. So using that recovery time that you would normally just be standing around doing nothing for mobility drills or activation drills can actually really enhance your workout significantly. You can even double the effectiveness of one of your workouts from a mobility and strength standpoint. It's really very effective. Do you always do a full body warm-up, or does it depend on the workout you're doing? I always do a full body warm-up, but I will emphasize what I'm working on. So that's a great question. Thank you for that. I'm going to go scap pull-up, L-sit to handstand. Then I'm going to go lateral chain activation, followed by single leg deadlifts. I'll do this for a few rounds, and I'll pop back and see if you guys have any questions and maybe throw a few comments out there, and then we'll just get right to it. Okay, here we go. So once again, I'm going to hollow out. So now that my shoulders are nice and prepped, I'm going to jump straight into my L-sit to handstand. And the L-sit to handstand was an exercise I chose because it is multi-vector. So normally you would have like a bench press, which is horizontal, or a military press, which is vertical. This actually passes through all those different ranges of motion, so it trains your shoulder in a much more complete way than standard weight training. And actually, if you follow the careful progressions that I've outlined in Ultimate Athleticism, anybody can do this exercise. So it's very approachable. It seems like a very high-level skill, but actually there are probably tens of thousands of 6-year-old girls around the country doing this as well. But it's very effective strength exercise. Single most effective exercise against knee pain under the kneecap while squatting. That is a really tough one because it's going to depend on each person. I would look certainly at making sure everything else is functioning well rather than focusing on the pain itself, because pain is just telling you that there's something wrong. It's not telling you what's wrong. So do ankle mobility drills, posterior chain activation, core activation, hip mobility, and see if that helps. And also stop doing the stuff that hurts for a while. So I'm going to go do some L-sit handstand, then I'll get right back into the rest of my session here. So my shoulders are nice and prepped. Get a nice V-sit, up to a handstand, and press out. And the amount of bend in the arms is kind of up to you. There's not a right way and a wrong way. You can do it with arms completely straight, or you can do it with arms bent. Either way will be just fine. If you can't do that full thing, you can just kind of pop back and forth halfway. So you would start here, go as far as you can through that movement, pop back, or do it with the knees tucked. And I actually have even more progressions in my book there. All right. Any more comments? Cool. If you do have questions, just let me know. I'll get right back to it though. I'm trying to play it cool, but those are actually, it's got me a little bit winded. So I'm going to do some hip abductions here, and I find if you stand next to something or reach an arm overhead, whatever, it will keep you a little more honest, because I want to move from my hip rather than move from my spine. So if I just kind of hang on here, that'll help me stay a little bit more upright, and I'll do this 10 times. You can also incorporate some circles into it. Once again, as I wrote in Ultimate Athleticism, joints like circles. Simple as that. So if you can find a way to incorporate some joint circles into your training, I think you'll be very happy with the results. I get my breathing under control. Go into our single leg deadlifts here. Single leg deadlifts are one of the best ways that you can build strength without putting too much pressure on the low back. I'm going to use a thick bar just to challenge my grip a little bit more. And I guess I'll go from the side so you guys can see what's going on here. Notice I'm getting a nice controlled eccentric, which is the lowering part of the movement. This is very important for keeping all the, keeping your joints in the right place, essentially, not letting them lose their proper centered position. All right, so from here, normally, I would go, you see me? All right, from here I would normally go back to another set of scapular pull-ups into L-sit to handstand, back to my hip abductions, and then straight into single leg deadlifts. And if you start using these little primers, you will notice the effectiveness of everything you do increase. What I'm going to do today, because I don't want this to last like 2 hours, is I'm just going to jump straight into what my next superset will be and give you an explanation for why that's important too. All right? So, good. All right. We got upper body pushing out of the way with the L-sit to handstand. We did that as a multi-vector exercise. We got single leg pulling, so lower body pulling exercise. And we also did some mobility drills. So we need an upper pull and we need a lower push. So what I like to do is I like to alternate. One of my leg exercises is going to be unilateral or one-legged. One of them is going to be bilateral or two-legged. So I'm going to do squats. My favorite variation of the squat is the Zercher squat, where you're holding it in the crooks of the arms. And just from a common sense standpoint, this seems like the most practical, because if you're ever going to need to really use your legs, it's usually because there's something in front of you, not because you've wedged yourself underneath something. So I think it gives you a little bit more of a practical strength, and it's a really good way to teach people proper squat technique as well. For my upper body pulling exercise, I'm going to use ice cream makers, which are my favorite upper body pulling exercise, period. It comes straight out of Ultimate Athleticism. It's a combination of pull-ups and front levers. It is multi-vector, and it is straight arm and bent arm. So there are a ton of benefits to these two exercises. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use two primers to make these exercises better. For the squats, I'm going to do some loaded ankle mobility drills. And for the ice cream makers, I'm going to do some pec stretches on the rings to open up and help me own that good top position and activate the backside. Because when you want to activate one side, if you stretch the opposite side, it tends to be a little bit more effective. So that's how I'm going to play this one. Movimiento humano e bello del saber. Oh, that's Portuguese, not Spanish. Oh, I still understand. Thank you very much. That's a lovely comment. Basically, he said my human movement's good, well executed, and he's learning a lot to implement. Thank you very much. So my Portuguese is terrible, but my Spanish is good enough to make up for it. Other question was, obviously for L-sit, handstand active flexibility of legs, which need to be drawn to the upper body is required. Which drills help increase this active flexibility? Well, Daniel, I should not ruin this for you because it is in my book, but I'm going to show you guys anyway. Anytime you want to build flexibility, it's going to be a combination of end range isometrics, deep breathing, and relaxation. So if I want to improve my forward fold for the L-sit, I would use some sort of stretch this way. I would want to make sure that I do some sort of isometrics in this position, like I would put my hands on my shins and try to lift one shin at a time and push into it. Or what I can also do is a seated floor hip lift, seated floor leg lift, which is straight out of my book, where I will do a forward bend, place my hands as close to my feet as possible, and then start doing leg raises. And this is a pretty popular movement in gymnastics. It's called compression work, and it is an important part of the L-sit to handstand, and you will want to do it. I would use it as a primer if that's a place that you really struggle with. So that's what I would do to improve that. So I'm going to pec stretch, ice cream maker, ankle mobility, and squats. I'll kind of explain along maybe some details, and then we'll call it a day. If you guys have any more questions after that, fire away. And if you want any more information, you can visit maxshank.com. So here we go. I'm just going to take the rings, and they can be pretty much at any height. It's just going to affect the stretch differently. I'm going to roll them behind me and try to squeeze my shoulder blades together. And I can actually start doing some of those same little scapular movements from here. Free the tension out of my neck. Open up those pecs and biceps. And then I'm going to also do some spirals this direction. Now, a lot of this, for you to fully understand, probably is going to require a lot more knowledge than just what I'm talking about right now. But like I said, if you do have any questions, just fire away and I'll get right into it. So that was the full front lever progression for the ice cream maker. You can actually use that using any of the progressive foot positions that we talk about in Ultimate Athleticism. For the Zercher squats and the ankle mobility, my ankle mobility drill is going to be kind of hard to see on video, but do your best. I'm going to put all my weight into one foot. This foot is going to be just like a kickstand, and I'm going to draw some circles with my foot. If you have to hold on to something, feel free. But at the front, I'm doing a calf raise out to the side, rolling through to the center onto the inside ball of the foot, and I'm going to circle that bad boy around. And I'll probably do somewhere around 10 on each leg and just prime those out. Then as you get more comfortable, less and less assistance, but still trying to keep the same integrity of the movement. And it is really challenging, but you know, a lot of very worthwhile things are extremely challenging. For Zercher squats, there are a couple ways you could do this. I could set this up there and use it as a rack, but if you don't have a rack, get your squat stance, deadlift it up, set it down on the thighs, and now you have a place where you can grab a hold. Nice tall posture, deep breath, and right back up. Definitely my favorite squat variation. Notice the controlled descent and the fast ascent. So there you have it. What I would do is I would take roughly, I'd probably do like 20 minutes of each of these particular strength blocks. And yeah, so probably about 40 minutes of strength work between a 5 and 10 minute warm up and between a 5 and 10 minute finisher at the end. After a training session like this, I'll probably just grab a couple of weights and go do some farmer's walks and crawling. So that's basically what I do. Doesn't require a ton of equipment. There are a lot of options you can do that are body weight only for training the legs, and really this is like it's so funny, it's like completely scratching the surface, barely. But if you think about training in terms of combining movements together that fit nicely, enhance each other, and don't fatigue or take away from one another, you'll be really shocked at what kind of results you can get. So everything I do is exactly laid out in my mobility program, 5-Minute Flow, my shoulder health and mobility program, Simple Shoulder Solution, and Ultimate Athleticism, which is a comprehensive guide to building all-around athleticism with as little time investment as possible. So it's very kind of like training economics 101, essentially. So that's basically it. And if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them out, and I'll get on those now. Let's see. Why am I still breathing so hard? That wasn't that hard, was it? Let's see. What is your take on injury? For example, straining your wrists. Do you try the move as soon as possible, or would you not strain it for it to healing well? That's a great question. I think what you're asking is essentially, if you do have an injury, like you said, wrist, for example, it's tempting to go back into doing your normal activities very quickly. You're much better off just slowly increasing what you can do with that wrist. So typically what you'll find is that mobility and pain are related, but they're not necessarily causality of each other. So, for example, if you have a wrist problem, you may find that you can move here just fine, but as soon as you move there, maybe it starts to hurt. So what I would recommend doing is, after an injury, you're going to have a zone where it hurts. So like, ow, 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 ow. So there's like your pain zone. It's like a circle. So you essentially want to just kind of like scrape the inside of that circle as frequently as possible and slowly make that circle grow. So your capabilities will increase as your range of motion does. So what I would say is don't stress it with normal activity too early, but what I would say is stress it as early as possible with some sort of activity, even if it's just like isometrics holding in one place, so you can get back on track as quickly as possible. And that's what I would recommend. So also remember what I said, probably like a half hour ago, was that the site of the pain or the injury may have nothing to do with it. So it's important, like in 5-minute flow, to take a full body approach to mobility training. Hopefully that answers your question. I think it does. What do you think about using a band or dowel instead of rings for opening up the chest and activating the upper back? It's great. That's actually one of the movements I use in Simple Shoulder Solution. I'm guessing you're talking about using the dowel and actively reaching back. This is called shoulder extension. Many people lack it, especially men. So if you can't reach your arms back there very well, it's not because you're too jacked in your back. That's what I thought for a long time. I was like, you know what? I think it's not my shoulders. I think I'm flexible. It's just I'm too jacked. No, that's not it. I was lying to myself. It's actually that you're not strong enough back there and you're too tight in the front. So it's a combination of those two. But I love that particular exercise. Are you going to show us a L-sit to handstand before you finish the live stream? Well, Daniel, you got here a little late, but I did several L-sits to handstand. But I just might do one more before I stop. Where do you learn all the mobility drills you teach? When is your next book coming out? Well, the mobility drills that I've learned have been from a variety of sources. Mainly meditating on a mountaintop is the #1 inspiration for these mobility drills. But actually one of the courses I went to early on called Z-Health kind of opened my eyes to a central nervous system based approach to training. And a lot of the mobility drills are from that. However, I also have a background in martial arts, and I'm learning about dance. And those have huge libraries full of different movements that people do for the sake of physical health. So there's not like a best way to do a wrist circle. There are ways that make sense for how your body's put together, but there's not really like a hard and fast best way. But those are kind of where I'm at. All right, thank you. It helped a lot. Hey, that makes me happy. All right, so I'm going to do one more L-sit to handstand for Daniel, and then I'm going to finish my actual workout. And when I come back to turn off the recording, if there are any questions, please feel free to throw them down there. I think I would probably get like 7th place out of the 7-year-old division with that move, but it's the best I can do. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. If you have any questions, drop a comment. If you want any more information on any of those products I talked about, head over to maxshank.com. And actually, if you sign up for the newsletter, I think you may get a discount, actually. If you don't, if you buy one thing, you definitely get a discount on other stuff. So there's some kind of discount going on. Anyway, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you over there. Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your day.